Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing great out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great week out there so far. We got a few things to go over in this morning's video, and what I can tell you right off the dot is things have really slowed down. There's not a whole lot to discuss, and I'm not going to jump on here and try to make these fear videos or try to tell you a giant Arctic blast is on the way or a tornado outbreak's on the way or a major winter storm is on the way just to get the clicks. I'm going to keep it real with you, and if things are slow, well, they're slow. But there's still things to talk about, and that is what's next. We're trying to figure out what the pattern's going to be in February. There's mixed signals and model guidance, so we're going to just go over all the latest model guides that we have. We really speak a lot on like the first 10 days of February. We pretty much know what it's going to do over the last few days of January. But what about the first, say, 1/3 of February? What is some things we do know about that period? So we're going to speak a lot on that, and then I'll give you my opinions on a couple things, and then after that we'll discuss today's weather, because there is a few things going on, a risk of severe weather. We got a lot of winter weather in the Northeast flying around, so we'll speak on all that. Then stay tuned for the very end of the video. I'm going to do something different, and this will be my first time doing it, so just bear with me. So a little bit of surprise at the very end of the video. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And I do have Rocket chilling in the background. He's laying behind my head. I haven't had him in the video in quite some time. So, say hey to Rocket. He might move, he might not. So, but if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So this is the latest from the Climate Prediction Center. We've been starting all these videos off by showing you this, and I think it's important to do so because they are the experts, and for a reason. So they have probably the best gauge on what potentially could happen. So this is between the day 6 to day 10 period, February 3rd through the 7th. This was issued yesterday afternoon. And hey, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see what's going on here. The warmer colors pretty much dominating the southern tier of the country. This means the Climate Prediction Center is going for above average temperatures in this time period for the southern tier of the country. And if your state's included in this, well, Climate Prediction Center saying, hey, it's probably a good chance you're going to be warmer than average for this time of the year. But one thing I notice is, you go from, for example, out west, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40, 33 in a very kind of short area, small area, geographical region right here. And it just really tells you that there's going to be a fine gradient somewhere separating warmer than average temperatures and well below average temperatures. You go up here to the Pacific Northwest, the Northern Rockies, it might finally be your time to shine as far as winter weather, where it's been pretty quiet so far this winter. So high confidence and below average temperatures up here. And it looks like the Great Lakes area and the Northeast is going to stay below average. While, you head just not too far south, like you get down to the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast, you're around average to well above average temperature-wise. Now, what I can tell you with the precipitation is it looks like most of the country stands a good shot to have active weather. Storm systems will be flying around everywhere. Some areas, around average precipitation in the gray areas, kind of that brownish light tan color right here, leaning towards drier conditions, but nothing screams super dry really for anybody except maybe Arizona and New Mexico. In fact, right here in the middle of the country, the Mississippi Valley into areas of the Midwest, looks like the main avenue where a lot of storm systems will fly through. Now, we do extend this to the 8 to 14 day outlook. Now, this has taken us, clear through the 5th through the 11th of February. So, first 1/3 of February, basically. And it's a similar outlook. Not a whole lot changes. What I can tell you is the Northeast maybe starts to warm up somewhat. The northern tier of the country, the Pacific Northwest and the western U.S. looks to be below average temperature-wise. And then above average temperature-wise still across the southern tier of the country. And the pattern supports this. The MJO phasing supports this. And just the pattern does. So same thing with precipitation. I'm not even going to pull it up. It looks very similar to the 6 to 10 day outlook. Going to be a lot of storm systems flying around. So an active pattern, but just because there's an active pattern in winter, that doesn't necessarily mean winter weather. It could just bring cold rain, depending on where you live. So let's go over all the model guidance from overnight into this morning. So this is the latest Euro. There's been some changes, just kind of a time frame I'm watching deeper into February, but we'll start this off tomorrow. the 30th. Time frames are up here, January 30th, January 30th. So this system we've been watching for a few days now will fly across the country. Big old rainstorm for the Midwest. I mean, this is all rain down here to the south. Washout will start to enter the picture for Friday. And then this will finally hit a true cold air source up here to the north where all your cold air is kind of just bottled up at. Low pressure will hit this cold air source. And once upon a time, this was showing a potential winter storm for Boston, New York City, areas in the PA, even northern New Jersey. This has trended warmer. Low pressure has just trended further north, and this looks like it's going to be a mainly a snow event for the interior New England area. And we'll talk more on that when we get a little bit closer over the next couple days. But this is a heavy, wet snow event for the interior sections of New England. Then the system will fly off, and you know, we're starting to get a little bit more agreement on what's next. We'll get a clipper that'll fly through the Great Lakes region to the northeast. This is getting into Sunday morning. We're getting some active weather, some snowstorms possible in the higher elevations, and heck, who knows? Maybe we get enough cold air or we get some snow kind of in the valleys, you know, Seattle down to Eugene, Medford. We'll see what happens with that, but this still doesn't look like enough cold air for that. But low pressure riding that gradient, you can see that L right here riding across the Rockies. And basically just the main flow of things is really just right in here. Everything down here is just kind of below the jet. So, I mean, doesn't mean you can't get storm systems flying through here, but they're going to be warm. So this is definitely where our ridge is flexing, warmer than average temperature south of that more zonal arrow that I drew. So we get this back off and we keep this going here. And you'll see just most of the energy flies to the north. So we get, you know, until next Tuesday morning, not a whole lot going on, just pieces of energy. And this is the next time frame I want to watch. You're going to see a lot of action show up right into here. Cold air starts to kind of come a little bit further south. It's about a week from today. And you start to get some overrunning. So I want to start to watch that. You know, some moisture starts to meet with some of this cold air a little bit further south, you know, northern Missouri, the Midwest. You know, no point in getting specific with the states, but day 7 to 10, you start to see some moisture tapping into some of this cold air that's starting to kind of inch a little bit south. And, you know, the latest Euro, this is like 9 days out, like next Friday morning, pretty far out, wants to show a big winter storm for maybe areas of the mid-Atlantic. I don't even know if you'd call that big because it goes from winter weather to rain, no locked in really true cold air source in place, and then it turns into another winter weather event for the Northeast. You continue to have a lot of energy flying to the west, and then we kind of get into no man's land. We get past day 10, unreliable time frame, and who knows what's going to happen after that. But what I can show you is after we get to the 10th and 11th of February, it does look like some cold air finally starts to dive south. Ridge flexes, you know, in the west, and heck, you know, 336 hours out, if you want to take that serious, which you absolutely should not, it does show some snow all the way down to North Carolina, southeast VA, and it shows finally some a dip in the jet stream back over the eastern U.S. But, you know, a buddy of mine that we follow each other on social media made a good point yesterday, and a lot of your winter weather fans aren't going to like this, but it's true. When you sit there and you get such a favorable, consistent troughing over the east for like 3 or 4 weeks, December into January, or basically for 2 months straight, because we did. I mean, starting in December into January, we had consistent deep digging troughs, cold fronts, cold air intrusions into the eastern U.S. You got that for 2 months. You're eventually going to offset that. And it just kind of looks like that's what's happening, at least for a period of February. Does the cold air return? It does seem like a winter that does just want to be cold. But that doesn't mean anything, really. There's no meteorology, you know, backing that up. That's just kind of me just throwing that in the wind, right? Same thing with the GFS. We watched this storm system into this weekend, Friday evening. It's a little bit colder on the GFS. Wants to bring this stripe of heavy winter weather from southern Ontario, heck, maybe even Detroit. I doubt Detroit will get much from this, though. And just south and just north of Boston gets this heavy snow in the Vermont, New Hampshire, the Adirondacks into Maine. And then that heads on out, and then here comes another clipper at the same time. We got a storm system diving into the Rockies. Clipper, same thing. Same thing with the Euro, right? Most of your energy is bottled up, kind of low pressure just kind of flying across up here. Your main jet is zonal up to the north, ridge, flexing, broad ridge into the southern tier of the country. You know, you're just not going to get a lot of cold air into this area. And then you continue, and this kind of zonal temperature gradient continues into early next week. This is getting into the 3rd, into the 4th. You can see where that 540 line is right here. You try to get this storm system that gets going into the high plains, and it never really does. And here's that time frame that I'm starting to latch on to. Same thing with the Euro. GFS has it too. We start to get overrunning. This is about a week from today, right here in this region. So moisture building into this cold air that's in place in the circled area. And we start to get the overrunning of moisture into that cold air. And we have to watch for some rounds of winter weather in this area. Is this going to happen? Not sure. It does show a big storm like in Sierra Nevada pumping out a lot of snow. And we just kind of got winter weather cruising across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, into the Mid-Atlantic. Then it turns into a bigger system between day 7 and day 10. It's getting into next Friday. Comes a quick hitting heavy snow event. And then the ridge spikes again, once again here in the eastern U.S. And we get this diving cold front to the middle of the country at day 10. And then we get energy that flies, along that boundary. But this is 288 hours out. I mean, there's no point in getting super detailed with that, but GFS does want to show a kind of a trough digging down, but at the very end of the run, it wants to flex that ridge again. So yeah, I mean, if you look at the footprint of snow between now and 300 hours out, so between now and Monday morning, February the 10th, you can see that the main footprint of snow, is obviously up here. Okay, all the way down to the Rockies, all the way into the Northeast. Okay, so for the most part, this looks like that the areas that have suffered lack of snow out here in the higher terrain of the Rockies, Sierra Nevada, Cascades, will finally start to pick up a lot of snow. Not seeing a whole lot in the Rockies of Colorado, but that certainly could change. But the main avenue of snow is for the northern sections. So where you have been really cold and dry in some of these areas, it's been cold enough for snow, but you haven't gotten any precipitation. I think that'll change. And this is more of a La Nina look. All the snows and colds bottled up to the north, but you notice down here to the south, you ain't seen a whole lot of anything between now and 300 hours out. And I think that the pattern supports that. I'm not expecting a whole lot of changes. Now, you look at the ice signal. I want to show you this because, this is between now and 300 hours out. Remember I showed you that overrunning potential about a week from today? Between kind of day 7 to day 10, you got to watch all this, area right in here. That is the potential for some ice. There's an ice signal there. How much? I'm not sure. I think the Euro ensemble with this ice signature doesn't always do the best, but it is picking up on not just pure snow events, but the potential for some freezing rain with this too. Might be some mixed bag storms is what I'm trying to say. So, you look at the pattern in general coming up, and it pretty much supports what the operational runs are saying. And the blue is lower pressure, a trough of low pressure, energy, colder than average air typically associated with it. And then the ridging is the reds, the pinks, the warmer colors. And typically you get warmer than average temperatures with that. Doesn't always reflect what's going on at the surface temperature and precipitation-wise. We don't live at 500 millibars, which is what this is, which is several thousand feet up in the air. But you start this off Monday morning, February the 3rd. There's that zonal ridge that I keep kind of talking about. See how it's just kind of going just like that, just a flat but very large ridge flexing over a large portion of the lower 48. And between that ridge and that trough, like this is the trough, this is the ridge down here, this is where all your energy is going to hang out and travel, right through there. And that's exactly what the operational run was showing. And that's where your temperature gradient will be too. Kind of like you got a zonal cold front that's just kind of sagging, bobbing and weaving north and south. And I think that'll be a lot of what it is. And then, you get about a week out and the ridge wants to really flex over the entire eastern U.S. We get this huge trough that gets slung up into northern Canada, Greenland. And then we get a larger trough that kind of dives down into the western U.S. This could bring more widespread cold, and we get about 10 days out. And it does show a little bit of troughing kind of diving down to the middle of the country. And this is, a good cold air source. You see how you have all this blue up here? There's cold air diving into this region. Canada's going to be cold. But this ridge is just kind of setting up shop, and the cold air is just kind of stopping right where this line is, and it's not really getting very far south. You're not getting a deep digging dip in the jet stream to really bring that cold air down. And I mean, heck, we go all the way to about past the 300-hour range, and heck, I mean, it still continues to show this ridge right into here, and maybe just a trough right into here. So, I'll tell you, that the pattern does not support. And, we'll look at the GFS ensemble, too. Dang, it's still running? Goodness, it's being slow. The pattern does not support, I would say, widespread cold. And you look at the Euro ensemble, it shows it well. This is getting into Monday of next week, Tuesday, the 4th, the 5th. Look at all that warm to the south. You get into the 6th, the 7th. The 8th, and we start to get closer to the 10th, and maybe some of that really warm air begins to get kind of back down a little bit, but it is very scattered everywhere. I mean, when you're getting these weird pockets of warmth right here, and it's cooler down here, and I would say this is supported here, but weird pockets of warm here, weird pockets of cold here. To me, it tells me that the pattern is still just trying to get resolved. I honestly think between now and day 10 is pretty much shot for not the Northeast necessarily, but if you live in like the mid-Atlantic, like points south to the Southeast to the southern tier of the country, I would say mid-Atlantic, you take them out. If you basically live for the southern half of the lower 48, I don't see a whole lot of winter weather chances for you, which, that's really the South, but just the pattern does not support it. The MJO phases does not support it. And, I haven't talked about this in quite some time, but this is the latest on the MJO phases. And I like to look at the Euro and the Euro extended here. And the reason that, we've pretty much gotten away from the cold, which is pretty much normal type stuff. Rarely these days, it seems like. I wouldn't say these days, but rarely do we ever just stay cold. I mean, we stayed cold for a while just now, actually. But, like, if you look really closely, you see this 1, this 3 here? That's January 1. So what we did here is we cruised through a null stage. We got into phase 8. We got into phase 1. We got into phase 2. And then we got into phase 3. All those phases I just mentioned are pretty cold phases, especially phase 8, phase 1, and phase 2. But now, what's the date today? Like the 28th, I think? Now we're in phase 4 or phase 3, okay? That is not a cold phase for most of the country. And the background supports it on models. I think that when you match what the MJO phase is saying we're in with what the models are showing, it pretty much makes sense. So we get into February. It does show this progressing nicely. That 1 right there, that's February 1. That 3 is February 3rd. Shows it progressing through 5 through 6, which are warm phases. Makes it all the way to 7. Things get kind of bottled up a little bit. But that's a 7 right there. I know it's impossible to see. But it has us on February 7th and phase 7, which is still a warm phase, but you're knocking on the doorstep of a much more favorable phase, which is phase 8. But not all models, show that steady progression. Like this, the ensemble forecast shows it kind of struggling to get out of phase 5 and 6, which would be locked. That means we would be locked into warmer than average temperatures for a good chunk of the country. If you look at the Euro extended, it just gets kind of mashed up, and it really slows down in phase 7. But eventually it looks like it tries to get into a weak kind of phase 8 pulse, almost a null stage, which is kind of inside this circle. And I can sit here and talk about this all day, but at the end of the day, you're not going to get cold air to really return widespread for the areas of like the southern tier of the country. Heck, even all the way down to like the southern Alps. Areas that can get winter weather even and you can get winter weather in unfavorable phases. It happens all the time, but I think what just happened over the last several weeks, the few weeks in January across the South, is a great example of what favorable phases can do. So, moving past all that, we'll continue to try to figure it out. It is a tough one. But today's weather, we got this really aggressive clipper moving across southern Ontario into the northeast this morning. It was dumping accumulating snow, definitely getting a lot of it. And then we got some moisture still hanging out down here in Texas, on the rise, I would say, as we're going to get a little bit of severe weather potential for Texas today. But this is what's going on right now. Western U.S. quiet. We got more Clipper energy diving in right there too. But as far as watches, warnings, and advisories, we got winter weather advisories in the purple, winter storm warnings in the pink. We got a lot of alerts across the Northeast for this winter weather. So this was showing a nice swath of accumulating snow down to Boston, but this system actually trended north. We got some winter weather advisories up here in Michigan, and then we do have winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings in the higher elevations of Colorado and New Mexico. So backing it out, let's get this off here and then look at the Storm Prediction Center outlook. It's actually showing maybe a convective element to some of these snow bands of snow. So yeah, to me, this is showing the potential for thunder snow today up here. So we'll watch for that. But looking at the area of interest as far as severe weather, marginal risk level 1 out of 5 risk of severe weather. I mean, there is a risk of a tornado in this area, really kind of north of San Antonio, but south of the I-20 corridor in this little patch right here, a risk of a tornado. And then there is a risk for some damaging winds and stuff like that. But, this downtrended yesterday, and I don't think it's going to uptrend. So we're thankful for that. Excessive rainfall, there is a slight risk. There is a slight risk of excessive rainfall for northern Texas, southeast Oklahoma, which means there's a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being exceeded within 25 miles in any given location. So there is a risk of flooding. A lot of rain could fall in a short amount of time over the next 24 hours. The southeast today, pretty quiet day of weather, beautiful day of weather, one of your warmest days you've seen in quite some time. The rain will not move into the picture into some of the areas until later tomorrow. Well, waking up tomorrow morning, still a nice start to your morning in the southeast, but you do got a lot of rain starting to enter the picture out west, but we'll talk about that more here in a second. But the northeast, it's snowing right now. We're going to continue to get these banding features. Some snow squalls are possible this morning into this afternoon. Some really heavy bursts of snow. You see kind of these areas right here in southern New England. These could actually pop off some thunder snow, some bolts of lightning, and some booms out there as far as thunder. And we're going to get some snow squalls popping off lake-to-lake connection here, Huron, over to Erie and Ontario. We'll definitely get some lake-enhanced activity east of the areas here, and this will continue all the way to tomorrow morning, and things will probably let up a little bit after that. But snowfall between now and the next 48 hours, a few to several inches of snow. Some of this is maybe already fell for southern areas of Maine, central to southern Maine. I mean, you're good for anywhere from an inch to 5 inches of snow. It just depends on where you live. The further south you get into southern Maine, the more snow. Down east areas of Maine, especially up to the coast, certainly could get a few inches of snow. Not a big event by any means, but certainly will add to your winter snowfall totals. And there's Vermont, New Hampshire, several inches of snow expected. The valley areas will get less. The higher elevations could get over a half a foot. So there's the key down there if you want to look at it. And then we will take it a little bit further south. Here's the rest of New York. The Tuck Hill Plateau will be favored for obvious reasons due to elevation. And, I mean, that's where you could get over a foot of snow depending on where you live. Watertown over a half a foot. Syracuse, 5-6 inches. Albany not going for much, but Binghamton, inch. Rochester, 3 to 4. Buffalo, 1 to 2. Jamestown, 4 to 5 inches of snow. And once you get south of this region, not expecting much, but a few inches of snow is possible down to the Allegheny Mountains. And I will show you southern New England, too. Boston, they are calling for around 2 inches of snow. So we'll see if this happens. Worcester Hills, Worcester. We're not going to get back into that, guys. I know you're already laughing at me. 2.5 inches possible. Berkshires could get a few to several inches of snow. Not much once you get down to New York City, though. The south central U.S., we're going to have a lot of moisture bubbling up. But the really heavy moisture and even the thunderstorms really do not get going until like later tonight. This is when we can get some thunderstorms in central Texas. Heavy rain kind of surging up in northern Arkansas. Rain up into Kansas, southwest Missouri. We just got to watch these thunderstorms as they kind of line over the same areas. Could get some flooding and could get a brief tornado, especially down here where your best thermodynamics are, your best moisture at the surface. and this continues. And really, as we're getting into tomorrow morning, a lot of rain starts to surge up through southeast Oklahoma, a good chunk of Arkansas, and then we have to watch those thunderstorms tomorrow riding across the Arkansas, kind of the Arklatex area, points south, I would say. But if you kind of back this up, check out the snowfall flying around in Colorado, the higher elevations of New Mexico and Colorado. And this is getting into tomorrow morning, actually. So definitely going to get some weather here. And here's this low developing here, but there's no cold air to really go along with it. But heck, I wouldn't be surprised if somehow this pumps out some wet snow. A little interesting feature that we'll talk more about in tomorrow morning's video here in Kansas. That definitely has my attention. But the updraft Felicity swath, not much between now and around the sun going down tonight. It's really when you get into the overnight hours, you know, there's those colors kind of peeking right into here. Could get a brief spin up. The HER model really favors these colored regions right into here where we can have a rotating updraft, a quick spin up kind of in central Texas. So I will show you, let's see if we can pull this up with how much rain could fall in these regions. Look at multi-day. So between now and the next 2 days, I want to mention this. A lot of rain can fall, over 3 inches in that bright red color, darker red 2.5. Down to Dallas, maybe 1.5 to 2 inches of rain. Arklatex, 1 to 2 inches of rain. Little Rock, kind of the same thing. You get north of Little Rock, west of Little Rock, southeast Oklahoma. I keep wanting to call southwest. Fort Smith, I mean, you can get well over 2 inches of rain. And here's just kind of a wider look at it. Click a couple different areas, but definitely going to get a lot of rain in this area. And a lot of rain even past this time frame too. But moving into the north central U.S., just some lake effect snows in the eastern UP of Michigan. These will kind of meander all the way down to the northern lower Michigan area. And that's about it. We'll start to get moisture that builds in from the south, but that really won't enter the picture until tomorrow. We do have another clipper flying in, but it's going to fly in over to the north, so on the northern side of Lake Superior, and I think this will miss you guys up in Canada. And then the western U.S., only storyline is this upper low that continues to spin around. This will bring higher elevation snow, lower elevation rain, and this will just continue to spin like that. And then, you know, some snow could add up. Santa Fe, maybe an inch. North into the higher elevations, several inches to maybe over a foot. There's a snowfall accumulation key down here. And then we will take a look at Colorado and how much snow they're calling for. If this will, looks like, oh, here we go. Denver could squeeze out about an inch of snow from this, but south of Denver, 3 inches in Castle Rock, Colorado Springs, 2 to 3 inches, Pueblo, inch or two. And then maybe some accumulating snow out in the high plains of eastern Colorado, but not expecting a ton out of this. But here it is. Here's the temperatures today. I mean, beautiful day in Georgia, Florida, the Carolinas, up into even just the southern sections of Virginia. Upper 60s, low 70s. It'll feel very warm, but you can see the cold air is locked in place up here to the northeast, the Great Lakes region. But, I mean, heck, it's almost going to get to 40 degrees in Minneapolis today, which is above average temperature-wise, and you got this pocket of warmer air north of kind of the rain shield developing to the south, 60s into the mid-Mississippi Valley, and very, very cold up in the northeast, though. And then out west, I mean, the only area that continues to kind of deal with below average temperatures is the areas kind of being influenced by that upper low, bringing its own cold air, but everybody else continues to be above average temperature wise. But that's about it, guys. I want to do something different, something that I believe another YouTuber does. It does weather, and I think it's a fantastic idea. It's a way to glorify God. So I'm not going to probably do this every video. Maybe eventually I will. I'm going to try to do this once a week, getting in a routine of doing it. But I want to read you guys a Bible verse, and I've been doing this plan that my church started where we kind of run through the Bible and memorize Bible verses, which I'll be completely honest with you guys, is something that I need to get better at as a follower of Christ. So I've been working on that over the last few weeks. But I just wanted to read a Bible verse for you guys and just talk a minute or two on it. But it's Romans chapter 4, verse 20 through 22, and it's, "He did not waver in unbelief at God's promise, but was strengthened in his faith, and gave glory to God, because he was fully convinced that what God had promised, he was also able to do. Therefore, it was credited to him for righteousness. So just wanted to read that to you guys, and I think it really speaks to having unwavering faith, which is, let's be real, it's tough for all of us, right? To have faith when things are tough, that God's going to take care of you. And I think for me personally, I've gotten a lot better about it over the last few years, and I've done probably my most growth as a man, but obviously as a follower of Christ, the most probably over the last 3 or 4 years. And just praying when things are just not going the best, and praying and praying and praying, and all of a sudden this calm coming over you, and suddenly you really, and it doesn't always, happen like this, but, for me, a lot of times, all of a sudden, I'll just get this calm that comes over me, and I realize that regardless of what I'm going through right now, I try to almost picture myself 2 weeks from the moment, and how everything is going to be okay because God's got me, and then looking back at the way I feel at the present moment and thinking, why did I feel that way? And that helps me so much. And of course, Abraham was a huge example of having the ultimate faith with his son, and just hopefully I just want to encourage you guys to just keep the faith, don't give up, and God's always going to come through, and just to pray for his will in your life. And sometimes his will on your life, it might not be what you want at the moment, but it's what you need. So don't pray for your own desires, I would say. Pray for his will in your life. And I think I'll just leave you with that. So first time doing that, going to try to continue to do it. I think that there's ways that we can glorify God. There's many ways besides just prayer. I think that was a great foundation that we've been doing for a few years now, but I think there's other ways to do it too. So God is good. I appreciate y'all very much. Thank you for people who continue to tune in. To tune in every single day, even though things have really, really slowed down. I appreciate the foundation of this channel so much. And that's all I got. We'll do it again tomorrow morning. God bless, and I'll talk to you again soon.